Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. My name is Brooke Brigham. I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist.
And today we are going to be talking about a new docuseries on Netflix. It is American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson, or O.J. Simpson, American Manhunt. I'm not sure the order.
I think it's American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson.
O.J. Simpson.
And I guess this is part of the series, and we did the other one, the Boston Marathon.
Right. This is the same director who did American Manhunt, Boston Bomber, which we did cover like at least a year ago or maybe more.
I think it was more than a year ago that we covered that. The other thing too was this also part of the American, but that's American Murder, Lacey Peterson. That's different.
That's a different series.
So there's murder and manhunts.
Right. This was a manhunt, as we'll see. So it's 4 parts. We're going to do part 1 and 2 today. And then next week we'll do part 3 and 4 because there's a lot here and we want to, take our time with this. And of course, anyone of a certain age, has been living with this, for most of our lives. And when I first saw this, I was like, do we really need another O.J. Simpson documentary? And I'm like, yeah, we do. We do.
We do. Yes. And I have I have a lot of thoughts, but I also had the exact same thought, which is really, what is there more to say?
What is there more to say? Yeah.
But apparently there is. And I have to say, I want to call out the true star of this. I have not watched episodes 3 or 4 yet, but the true star of episodes 1 and 2, Tom Lang. He was
one of the lead detectives.
One of the lead detectives. We have seen Tom Lang in other things. I don't know if you, when you had COVID and Steve and I covered, what's his face? The murder, Spector.
Phil Spector
murder. Tom Lang was part of that. So you see Tom Lang a lot. Like, I think obviously he has been part of these huge cases. But what I realized about all of this is that much like us Gen Xers, these people are in their fuck it stages. Like Tom Lang is, I'm retired. I don't care what any of you think about me. I don't care what I say. You're an idiot. We should have done it this way. This guy couldn't have figured this out, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's what we're getting. I think this is my 2 cents. I don't know if this is true. I think some of it is maybe this is one of my questions to you was, are we getting certain materials that we haven't seen before because OJ is gone? Because he's passed on. Is that part of it? And I do wonder if that's part of it, is people are maybe speaking differently now that he's gone. The other part too is, you're getting people that are really like they've had 30 years to think about this, and no one is trying to protect anyone's feelings anymore. Like none of this is about anything. I feel like that's what it felt like to me. It was like, I'm going to say what the truth is. And,
I think, I don't think it's that. I don't think it has anything to do with that OJ's dead. I don't think anyone gives a shit, or, they would talk about it freely anyway. I think the big thing is that it's just time and perspective. And so, so when I first learned about this, I was going, why are we doing this? And then I listened to some interviews with the director, and I think he's a bit younger, and he was talking about kind of revisiting this story for people who didn't live through it and really don't know everything. And plus the fact that so much time has gone by and there is perspective.
Yes.
And a lot of these people, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, they didn't really want to speak about it before. Christopher Darden has been famously hesitant to talk about this. And then in this, at least in part 2 here, he's just... again, he's in his effort era. It's like, I'm going to say what I feel and what I thought. And he's one of the people who was treated the most unfairly, I think, in this whole case. And so it's a combination of things. And there are people out there that don't know all of these details. It's hard for us to fathom that. But yeah, if you're 25 or 30, and it's also trying to capture the time, to capture what was going on in LA at the time and how did this happen. And so there's so many things about this where we have so much more perspective now on race, on domestic violence, on all the components that were a part of this case. So it is worth taking a new look at it, and especially with these people willing to talk. And I can't remember if Kim Goldman has ever, I've heard her on podcasts. She had her own podcast where she interviewed people from this case, but I'm not sure how much she's ever talked before.
Oh, I feel like she had. I feel like I've seen her a lot, and I think she's gotten a tremendous amount of unfair criticism for being too, like, a lot of people have said, oh, can't you just get over it? It's like, no, it's her brother. And she said very clearly in the documentary, I'm here because I need to be here. And I think the feeling is her dad doesn't want to do anything. So it's only her and her father that can. And I think she feels like I have to keep showing up to tell people that there was another person involved in this. And this is my brother, and I love him and miss him terribly. And so I think that's Kim Goldman I think that's her mission, is very much this, people always forget about my brother. And but I need to keep showing up so that you all, because
it was always Nicole, Simpson, and her friend.
But that there was someone else that was part of this that did not deserve, that gets lost a lot of times. The other thing, what was the other thing I was going to say about, it's funny because when I think about this case, growing up, right, the biggest thing I remember growing up was, where were you when Kennedy was shot? Right? Like everyone, our parents and all of their friends all had a story about where they were when they heard that JFK was shot. And I think that in many ways, this was us. Like, where were you during the Bronco chase down, when you found out about the murders, the Bronco chase, because I can remember the verdict, like every single place that I was in these moments, I know exactly where I was, what was going on, what was happening. And so, for our generation, this was very much that moment of like, where were you? And what did you think? And how did you feel?
Yeah,
and all of that.
I also think that it's hard to explain to somebody who is under 50 just how popular O.J. Simpson was. And I was trying to think of a modern day equivalent of O.J. Simpson, and I could not.
No.
Because he was colorless.
Yes.
Okay. He truly was one of these people who, everyone loved him. They did not see color. He was an athlete. So there was that whole component. And then he transitioned into being in movies and just sort of being this overall celebrity who was always at celebrity things, commercials, and everybody loved him. And I cannot think of a modern day equivalent of so many people like admiring a celebrity. And so this was it was devastating to everybody. Everyone
no one wanted to believe it. I didn't want to believe it.
Yeah. No, could not believe it.
Yeah. I mean, it took me a long time to want to believe it or even to believe it because, he was a big fixture. I mean, everyone knew that he was a football star. I never watched him play football, but the Hertz commercials, the juices like running through the airport, the Naked Gun movies. He was a broadcaster. I mean, he was everywhere. And he was just this beloved celebrity. And the idea of wrapping your brain around that. And they interview his sports agent.
That was interesting.
That was very interesting and his perspective on things. And I thought he made some really good points, which is a little bit of who did I know? Who did I know? And I think he brings up a good question, which is what I always find so fascinating is OJ that really great, nice guy? And is there this part of him that's a monster, or is he a monster that can put on a mask for a certain period of time?
Well, even a monster. Just is he a good person who did a bad thing,
or is he
a bad person who can sometimes do good things, or most of the time, can act and do good things? Yeah, was that just an act that we saw?
Yeah,
when we were saw him on television. So it's like, who is this guy who I've known for all these years? And it was really hard for everybody to wrap their brain around that.
I think there's also another theme in all of this that happens with when these things happen with celebrities. It's this idea of I think that what it takes to be an athlete, a Heisman winner, NFL, what it took to be OJ and accomplish what he had are those elements of tenaciousness and control and ego and confidence and drive. Why is it that those things, some people can just stay in that place? And like, if I was to pick someone, I don't know, like Tom Brady or something, like some people can stay in that place and be driven and do the things that they need to do and have that idea, have that drive and desire and it not create problems. But then you have this other camp of people where the ego and the drive and the need, it turns into this narcissism that then turns into control. And then it becomes about, right, well, hold on a second. I've controlled everything, or I want things the way I want. And my ego has allowed me to have all these things, and anything I've controlled. So I'm just going to keep controlling things. That's what I find so fascinating. Like why one person would go in one direction and why someone would go in another, because the traits, the personality traits and that internal motivation that you have to be a professional athlete is very unique.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about this before when we've talked with our Uncle Bill about the different, these sports documentaries. And I really think it goes back to your grounding, the Steph Currys of the world and, the people who were not just that had that drive, but also came from a very grounded family, a very safe place. I think those are the people who maybe escape the traps of, as opposed to, I know O.J. Simpson's growing up wasn't great. He had kind of an absent father. And in fact, his father was gay at a time where you couldn't be gay. I think,
right. That's
remember,
right.
I think
I forgot about that.
He was trans before there was a word for that. People called it, all kinds of different things. But I think that his father, was a dancer in some kind of, club in San Francisco. And so there was all this shame about the father. And they grew up in poverty. What was it, Hunter's Point? That area of San Francisco.
It's interesting because with so many of these documentaries, that's one thing. I like the documentaries where they talk about the childhood because now I'm thinking, I can't remember which documentary told us about the dad, because the dad did show up in one of these documentaries that we covered recently. I can't remember, but that is really fascinating. And I wish they always give us all the details of the murder and everything that happened. It's like, can we go back to the beginning, please? Yeah. Can we go to like who he is and who he was and what I'd love to talk to some psychologists about like why they think, what happened here.
Yeah, it's interesting that people don't really delve that much into his childhood and his background, because there's a lot there. And also just in his early life, he had a daughter who drowned in the pool at Rockingham, and then he continued to live in that house.
Yeah.
He lived there with Marguerite and then later with Nicole, and a lot. There was a lot of stuff that happened. And I want someone to make a documentary that focuses on, and there have been, there's been so many documentaries, and some of them do, but it's never it's never the thing that people go to.
Yeah.
That's not what people focus on. So yeah, there's a lot here, and we'll talk about these different themes as we move along, I guess. So, the first episode, I was a little worried after the first episode because it was like, well, we know all this, they kind of like go through the murder, like what happened and the witnesses who saw this or that. And okay, Mark Furman shows up and then Mark Furman shows up in person on the screen, and he has not spoken about this case since he pled the fifth, and he was, he pled no contest to perjury for lying on the stand.
Did he do any time?
No, no. He this was just symbolic because, famously he testifies about how he finds the bloody glove and this and that. And then on cross-examination, the defense already had it all lined up. And they asked him, have you ever referred to Black people as, the N-word? And he's like, oh, no, never. And and then they bring in these tapes of him using it quite frequently, and people testifying about, that he's racist and he uses this word all the time. And then they bring him back to, try to recross or something. I don't know. And then he just pleads the fifth, and he refuses to testify. And then, pleads no contest to perjury. So that's the last time we heard from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he is.
Yes and no. Apparently, I think he writes books now. I think sometimes
he has written about it.
Yeah. But I think he also writes like true crime, maybe a separate something like that, as does Marcia Clark, apparently, writing true crime.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that came up a lot in the first episode, and it comes up in the second episode as well, is we meet a lot of people. We meet Jill Shively, the witness that saw him, fleeing the scene in the car and allegedly.
Yeah.
But then we learn, okay, bloody fingerprint on the back gate, never collected. Jill Shively never called to the stand. There were a lot of these. Like, they kept pointing out all the ways in which, like, this evidence wasn't collected, this person wasn't called, this wasn't brought into evidence. So why?
I have some theories about this. Okay, so I think it's a combination. Why it was never collected in the first place, that's maybe sloppy police work.
Yeah.
But the evidence that they did collect, that they chose not to use at trial, probably it was one of two things. Either there was a problem with the evidence and the way it was collected, and they knew that. And they knew that Johnny Cochran was going to, rip them apart. And so they're like, well, we don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to go near that.
Yeah.
Or they thought, we don't need this evidence, because you have to realize, to present like one piece of evidence could take over an hour. Because you have to get the person on the stand. They have to explain how it was collected and the chain of custody and what they did. And, it's very tedious and time consuming. So in order to get one piece of evidence, it could take hours potentially. And then, they're going to be cross-examined about it and blah, blah, blah. And they didn't have a lot of time. They knew that the jury only has so much bandwidth. And also the judge is telling them too, we got to move this along. These people have been sequestered. They were sequestered for 8 months, the jury.
Yes.
And so, and the judge, and this is on television, it's being televised, which is a whole nother level. So the judge is telling them, look, you got to move this along, move it along. So they had to pick and choose.
Yeah.
What are we going to introduce? And it also could be that I think in a lot of these cases, they didn't think they needed it, because the prosecution thought that all the blood evidence, especially the blood trail going from the Bronco into Rockingham and matching the blood at the scene to OJ's blood and all of that, I feel like they felt that that was strong enough. Like that was enough. That's all you need. And then they also felt they were very confident in their assertion that this was a domestic violence case. And they really wanted to focus not just on the blood, but on the domestic violence. And so, you know, if they introduced absolutely everything, they would have been there for 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's my theory.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I didn't know if at first I was like, are they trying to point out that there are all these holes? I figured it was something like, you know, yeah, you got to pick and choose. And, you know, I think that when it comes to the evidence, I think this is something that I personally had never thought of before, but the way in which it was presented to us in this documentary about this idea of too much evidence, like it was almost too good to be true, to the point where it's a little bit like all you need is one, you know, you just need one. And we meet Johnny Cochran's, I guess the managing attorney,
Carl Douglas. And I think we see him in the Ryan Murphy Made for TV, because I think an actor that I used to work with played that guy. And so I think we see him in the documentary, and he describes what's happening, and he talks about, like, you know, there was so much evidence. It's like this big giant bowl of spaghetti, and it's huge, and there's so much there. And it's like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden a cockroach shows up, and suddenly it's not just one string of the spaghetti. It's all the spaghetti. It's all the spaghetti. You don't want to eat any of the spaghetti. All the spaghetti is bad. And just the fact that they were, like, in some ways, the fact that there was so much evidence worked to the defense's favor, because all you needed was to show something that everybody already felt and knew. They just needed, they needed confirmation. Yeah. Well, and that was the defense's, one of their main, if not the main angle with Peter Scheck, or Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, who were the DNA experts. And keep in mind, young people, this DNA stuff was new.
Yeah.
It was very new. And there weren't a lot of people trained in it or knowledgeable about it. So Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, who went on to found the Innocence Project, they were like the leading scholars of this in the United States. And Barry Scheck, during the defense case, he talked about this garbage in, garbage out. And it's the same as the cockroach theory.
Yeah.
It's like, if you have one bad piece of evidence, you can't trust anything that comes from that. So you have all this improper collection, and they show people, stepping over the blood, and, you're contaminating the crime scene, and you're not collecting the samples properly, and all of this. And he just kept saying that over and over again, garbage in, garbage out. So this is not reliable. You can't rely on any of this because it was all tainted, and it worked.
Yeah.
Well.
Because all you needed was to hear Mark Furman say the N-word a few times. And you're like, oh, okay. So now you've confirmed everything that has been happening. And I think that, do you think that they could have still gotten OJ off if the LA riots and Rodney King hadn't happened? Do you think that has to happen in order for this? Or do you think they still would have, because this was a problem. It was just right in everyone's face for the first time.
Yeah. I think that he still could, I think there still would have been a level of that feeling combined with the DNA garbage in, garbage out stuff. So, but the Rodney King verdict and just the clash with the LAPD and Black people in Los Angeles that had been bubbling over for years and years and years, that just pushed it over the edge. It was just like, gave it just the little push that it needed. And I thought it was fascinating hearing about Carl Douglas and Christopher Darden talking about that in the second episode. And I don't know, we can get to that. I don't know if there's much more in the first episode that was really that interesting.
Yeah.
We all know the story. We all know what happened that night. And yet there was witnesses who said they saw this or saw that. We see Kato Kalin, who he has been out there giving interviews. And, this poor guy,
Yeah. I really feel for him.
He's just caught up in the middle, and he became kind of, he wanted to be like a serious actor.
Yeah.
And he came to LA and he's trying to work, and then he gets caught up in this, and then everybody forever sees him as, this kind of goofy house guest of OJ's, and it kind of ruined any chances he had people take him seriously.
And I think that, and I don't blame him because he was a struggling actor. I'm sure he was like, okay, well, people are offering me interviews and they're going to pay me, and people are offering me Hollywood squares, or I can get this, or I can get that. Like, I would understand him being like, okay, I guess I have to take the opportunities, and maybe hoping maybe someday it would turn into something else. But yeah, this really changed the trajectory of his entire life. Like, this was not at all what he thought or wanted for his life. I think the other very interesting part of the first episode was about his friend Ron Shipp, the LAPD officer, and he was friends with OJ. And the fact that Ron had been friends with Nicole and knew Nicole, and, the fact that Ron Shipp, was it Ron Shipp that called Furman and said, hey, did OJ do this? Like, cop to cop, did OJ do this? And he wouldn't say, but just the realization, like hearing him talk about how he's realizing like, oh my God, he did do this because of how he was acting and the questions that he had, and, some of these other things. I thought that was really, that's something we haven't seen so much before, is what it's like to be a close personal friend of OJ's. I mean, very famously, Robert Kardashian, like everyone's thought that that's his story, right? His realization that, oh my God, I was here and I defended my friend, and oh, wait a second, but
yeah, that's another interesting part of this case. But but these cops knew OJ. Like, the cops on the west side of LA knew him. Ron Shipp was one of them. He hung out with them. He would invite them over for barbecues and parties and pool parties and whatever else. And they also responded to his home several times for domestic violence calls.
Furman had been there. Yeah.
Yes. Furman had been there 9 years before. It was a New Year's Eve party. He was called there for a domestic violence incident. So everybody knew. Everyone in the LAPD knew this was going on, but it was like, but it's OJ Simpson, and if you're nice to him, he'll invite you over to his mansion for a barbecue.
Yeah.
And oh my God, isn't that cool? So yeah. And then it went too far, obviously. And then Ron Shipp was kind of like, what? Like, this happened? Like, how did we get here? But yeah, there's speaking of Robert Kardashian, famously, he is seen, there's, video of this, you can just Google it. He's very involved in this whole thing. He is seen when OJ came back from Chicago, gets out of his car, limo, however he got there. OJ has a couple bags. He puts one bag down like on one side of him, and then there's another bag that's kind of off to the other side. It's a garment bag, like a Louis Vuitton garment bag, and it's just kind of sitting out there. And it's as if he knew what to do. Robert Kardashian walks over to that bag and picks it up and takes it into the house. And everyone speculates that there was something in that bag that implicated OJ, and Kardashian got rid of it. And there was also, they talk about a witness who was at the airport who said,
Junis.
Yeah, he says that he saw OJ getting out of the limo and that he put something in a trash can at the airport. He said it was something long. The guy was just sitting there in his car waiting to pick up his wife.
Because OJ had all of this very expensive Louis Vuitton luggage, and then this like old satchel thing that he was holding on to, like some crappy bag that he was holding on to for dear life. And Kato Kalin thought that was, Kato Kalin was trying to help the limo driver. Like not one person could touch that bag. That's very odd.
Yeah.
And that's something you would pick up on. I was like, this guy has, that's OJ. Oh, look at all that nice luggage. Well, why is he holding on to that? Well, what is he throwing away? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you can believe that that's very clear. And why wasn't he called to court?
Again, I don't know.
I guess it's all just there's no way to.
It didn't really fit into their.
What's the word for it? Like, can you not do that because it's just his story? It's just, I mean, that's just hearsay.
No,
right?
It's not hearsay if it comes from, he's telling, if he says,
this is what I saw.
That's not hearsay.
Okay.
Yeah. Hearsay is something in writing that someone else wrote and you repeat it.
Okay.
Or something someone else says or writes or whatever, and not you.
Yeah. But definitely the first episode made me realize, my God, there was so much more evidence that I even knew. I mean, it just went on and on and on and on. I guess I knew that afterwards they were able to get into OJ's house and that there's black socks on the carpet and there's blood and medical supplies everywhere in the bathroom. And there's a knife box open on the edge of the tub. I mean, there's laundry room, there's blood on the light switch. There's fresh clothes in the washing machine. Just like, oh God, this goes on and on and on. I was like, wow, I didn't even know there was that much.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, and they talk about the fact that this always I thought was strange. They call OJ in Chicago to tell him what had happened, and he didn't really ask any questions. Yeah, like how did she die? What happened? Where are my children? Nothing. It was just sort of like, oh, okay, well, I'm coming back now. So, but yeah, and because there was so much, especially at the crime scene, because there was so much blood, it was so messy.
So these OJ interrogation tapes, the ones where is it Van Natter is asking him questions, have these been released before?
I believe so.
Okay, because that was one of my questions about. I don't know if I've ever seen this tape of them asking OJ about his finger and what happened to his finger and the stories about his finger and the fact that they asked him, about his finger. And then the first time it was like, I don't know. Okay, then maybe I cut it in Chicago. And then, maybe I did it this way. And all of these things. I just didn't know that. I didn't know. I don't think I'd ever heard. I knew that he had told a lot of stories about the cut on his finger. I just had never heard it from his mouth. So that's why I was just wondering. I'm like,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't remember if that tape was ever played, but I mean, it certainly was, Van Natter can I think Van Natter is dead because we didn't see him in real life. And maybe that's why they just played it. Because he wasn't there to be interviewed and because they just showed pictures of him and was talking about him. So I think he's died.
But there's a lot of finger pointing, it seemed like. It seemed like Mark Fuhrman is pointing the finger at Tom Lang. Tom Lang is pointing the finger at Mark Fuhrman and Van Natter. It seems like all of these police officers are all pointing at each other about how poorly things were. And it seems a little bit like the people that were taking orders, and I think Mark Fuhrman was one of them, that were a little bit younger, were a little bit like, listen, I was just following along with you, but now you're throwing me under the bus here because this didn't turn out the way we thought.
It was a very chaotic, just process, the whole thing, I think, and that was what the defense could exploit. They could exploit how chaotic everything was. So anyway, so OJ comes back and within, I don't know, the funeral is like the next week. Within a day or two after the funeral, they get a warrant for his arrest based upon this evidence that they found at his house. And that's another thing too, that they were able to get into his house. I can't remember if they had a warrant or did Cato just let them in? I don't remember, but imagine if they somehow were never able to get into his house. I mean, they still had the stuff from the Bronco that was on the street. And why did he leave it on the street? If he would have just taken it into the gate, closed the gate, parked it inside, they would have had to have a warrant to get all of this. Yeah. If someone let them in the house. I mean, OJ should have stayed there and protected his home, but yeah, very chaotic.
Well, obviously as we see, he's not a sophisticated murderer.
No. This is his first murder that we know of. Yeah. So anyway, this is where Tom Lang gets real hot because, instead of just going to OJ's house with the warrant and arresting him quietly, the LA, I don't know if it was it Gil Garcetti, the DA, or who was the guy who was the chief of police?
Yeah. So
Gascon.
Gascon. So and this is a different Gascon
Maybe
than
he's
the guy?
related. I don't know if he's related.
Because I was looking at him going, yeah. So what's the other guy's name? The
George Gascon.
George. Okay. So I was
former
yeah.
DA. I don't know if they're related or not, but anyway, they wanted to have this perp walk.
Yeah.
They wanted him, instead of him just surrendering or what, I don't know. They wanted to make some media spectacle out of it.
They wanted to be heroes. I think they wanted to be heroes. And that's the thing, right? It's this weird thing of them thinking, oh, okay, if we do this thing with OJ, we'll look like these big, bad, tough cops and we've arrested him and here we go. Not really knowing that even if that had all happened, I don't think people, the sentiment towards him that's not how people saw him.
No.
No,
so not at all.
It was a little out of just lack of understanding of what was going on. And then again, we've got OJ that has a huge ego. And so we're already seeing the LA Police Department has a huge ego, right? Their ego. So if they had checked their ego, which is what Tom Lang was trying to say,
right,
this would be very different.
Yeah. And so but he's not at home. He's at Bobby's house, Robert Kardashian. And again, at the time he's officially being represented by Robert Shapiro, who is just a celebrity lawyer.
Yeah.
He's not, not equipped to, he's not used to dealing with all these issues involved in criminal defense. And so this gets kind of really bungled up. And so anyway, he's at Bobby's house and then all of a sudden he's gone.
Yeah.
He just took off and he left a note.
Yes, the infamous note.
The infamous note that was read by Robert Kardashian, which is a strange note. It's sort of half kind of suicidal. And I wonder, do you think he was truly suicidal or was this just narcissist talk? Because it's kind of an odd letter.
I think this is what his sports agent was talking about. And I think this is what we see throughout this, which is OJ likes control, and that desperate need for control and the ego, again, has helped him in many ways. But I think that he I don't know. I just think that his narcissism, I agree with what Tom Lang said, which is his narcissism would never let him truly hurt himself. But I think the note was very much this, how do I project out to the world that same image of being a hero and being a wonderful person? And also, I think his subconscious of what really was happening, because he's talking around it, right? He's guilty and he's pretending like he's not guilty, but I need I can't have you all looking at me like I am guilty. So I need to project out to you that. And I think many times this is a bit of a go-to for people where it's like you become the victim. Like you become like all of this is happening to me. So I need to remove myself. I am broken. I am this. I am hurt.
Yeah. Nicole did this. Nicole did this to me. Like I just loved her and she,
and she's gone now. And now you're all looking at me like I'm a murderer and that's not okay. So how dare you? And so because of that, I'm just going to go off somewhere. I mean, it's I think Tom Lang really had his number. That's why I liked him. He really got OJ.
Yeah.
He really got where he was coming from and what was going to appeal to him or not. But no, I don't think he was anywhere near committing suicide. Yeah. I think if he was just going to commit suicide, he would have written that note and blown his brains out and controlled it there.
Right.
Him fleeing was out of control. And obviously with everything that they caught him with, I think he was trying to skip town. He was avoiding having to face the consequences. Psych Legal Pop will be back after these messages.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, but okay, so the story that why am I blanking on his AC Cowling's his best friend, who they have matching white Ford Broncos.
Yes.
The story AC said was that because they were coming from Orange County, so that's where Nicole was buried, because she's from Laguna Beach, that they went to go visit her grave. And so they're on their way back. They're coming up the 5 freeway. Now you're going to hear a lot of California freeway talk.
Yeah.
We call freeways the number, the 5. So they're going north on the 5, and they get to the intersection of the 5 and the 405, which is called the El Toro Y, because it's near El Toro in Orange County. It's big interchange. And somebody spots them. This is crazy to me, that I don't even think had word even really got out yet that OJ was on the run.
Yeah, because they said that at first they were trying to contain it, and then it was like, oh crap, we can't find him, and then they eventually put an APB out, so like everybody knew.
Okay, so
Everybody.
someone calls and says, I just saw AC in the white Bronco, and OJ's in the car, and they're on the 405 or on the 5, and so then this woman comes on, Marika Gerard, who is a helicopter pilot. And, she talks about how she and her ex-husband used to be, they were helicopter news people. And, they'd fly around LA and, get coverage of stuff. And so her ex-husband is a trans woman named Zoe Tur, who is, they're the parents of Katie Tur, who's on MSNBC. And who was a political reporter.
Okay.
Yeah. Just some LA history.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were a very famous couple. They for years were, this couple, and you saw how she's hanging out of the helicopter.
Yes. She's a badass.
These people are badass.
Yeah.
They would fly around LA, and just and wait to hear things about something's happening. And then they'd fly over there and get footage, and they were very, very well known. So pretty soon, everyone knows exactly where he's headed. And so he gets on the 405, and he's driving back towards his home.
So you don't think he was trying to flee? So why all the money and the passport and the outfits? Do you think that he was originally going to go visit Nicole and then maybe go down to Mexico, and then they decided, okay, let's circle back?
I don't know. Maybe AC talked him out of it. I don't know why I could see having a bunch of money on him and, the gun or whatever, but the disguise.
The passport and the disguise to me was
the disguise is the most weird.
Yeah.
But
that's fleeing.
I don't know. But what was he going to do? Where, I don't know. I don't know what he was doing. But anyway, they were basically heading back in the direction of OJ's house. And so then AC calls somebody. Did he call Lang, or I don't know who he calls, but he says, he has OJ with him, and OJ has a gun to his head, and that OJ just wants to get home. You know, just wants to get back to Brentwood, wants to get home. And so this is this where the second episode starts, or we're already in the second episode?
Yeah, we're in the second episode because the second episode is very much just about the chase.
Okay. Yeah. So this is what I was really stunned. My memory, I didn't remember the sheer number of people who were lining the freeway, lining the overpasses with the signs, saying go juice and the juice is loose and all of that. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people heard about this, low speed chase. And they were pulling over on the side of the freeway, stop traffic. Everyone's pulled over just to watch. And they were cheering him on.
Yeah.
They were cheering him. And, the way that they were pursuing him, going back to the title, it was a manhunt. And then again, the sheer number of police cars and armed snipers. I mean, they were ready to kill him.
Yeah. I mean, if they saw anything, that was, they knew that. They knew if he presented himself at all with a gun at some point,
that was it.
That was it. He was dead.
Right. And so then I can't remember if it was Carl Douglas or Christopher Darden who said that in that moment of thinking that OJ either might kill himself or the police might kill OJ, made people care about him.
That was Chris Darden.
Yeah.
And I think that was the most interesting thing in a perspective that I had never thought of how much that chase, how much that influenced people and how that actually also changed the course. It changed the course of how everyone saw him. Because again, I was in LA at this time and, you hear about the murder and you're trying to wrap your brain around it and you just can't believe it. You just don't want to believe it. Like, no, there's something off about this. No. The other thing too is don't forget that Gascon made an announcement at like noon or 1 and the chase did not end till like 7 or 8
o'clock.
Yeah. So that was the other thing too, was that there was such a long period of time in between. So all of a sudden it was like, you could actually leave your job and go out out there and watch it. You could have, been a part of it. And yeah, I was in Culver City at the time. We could hear all the choppers. It was like,
there were choppers, dozens of choppers in the air.
And the other thing too was you were a bit stuck because I was staying in Santa Monica. So I was going to have to cross the 405.
Yeah.
So that was the other part of it too, was everybody was
everyone was stuck.
Everyone was stuck.
Yeah.
And LA, the other thing about LA that I think is very different than the Bay Area and maybe other places is LA kind of starts later and ends later, and they work longer. Out here in the Bay Area, like by 4:35, people are done. You know what I mean? Except for maybe some tech people. But for the most part, people are heading home, like they're done. LA is strange. Like things don't end till 6:37. There's always things you have to do afterwards. So that's the other part of it too, is everyone was kind of at work. Everyone was somewhere with a group of people watching this. People weren't home,
Yeah, no, this is going through a big city and the city of LA, like the Wilshire, like all this is where all the big buildings are. And these are people coming out of work, coming out of buildings and lining the freeways, and people traveling, from even long distances just to get a glimpse of what was happening. And so
95 million people watched that pursuit.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about that.
This is how everyone got. So that combined with what had happened 2 years earlier, where, 4 white cops were acquitted by an all-white jury for beating, savagely, almost beating to death Rodney King. And it was all caught on tape. And that led to one of the worst riots in American history in South Central Los Angeles. And it was horrible. And so this is just 2 years later.
Yeah.
And the community is just sick of this.
Yeah.
They're just like, this is bullshit. Like even, forget about forget about that it's even OJ. I mean, that's part of it. But it's like, oh my God, we have another thing where a Black man is being accused of something and these white police are hunting him down and treating him like right or wrong. It didn't matter. It was the perception. It was the perception that they are hunting him. And everyone just got on board with OJ.
Yeah.
The whole community.
Because there's our hero. Here's our hero. And he's struggling and he's sad and he wants to talk to his mother.
Right.
And I think the pieces of what Tom Lang was talking about was he was communicating with OJ back and forth on the phone. And every time he got on the phone, he'd be like, OJ, think about your kids. Your kids cannot have another tragedy. That didn't work with OJ. It was always about him. And then that tells you a lot, right, about him. But again, at that time, that little narcissistic subtlety that really tells you a lot about who OJ is and why he would do this thing is in that moment in this big spectacle kind of way. Well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You're being chased. And the Rodney King tape, it was, I can't remember where I was when I first saw it, but it was utterly shocking.
Horrific.
Just horrific to watch, horrific to see. And I think for a lot, I can only speak for myself, but like white privileged people who that was not your experience. You just did not think that existed. I mean, how? What? Who would do it? You know, you're in your little Berkeley liberal world that I lived in. I just could not fathom that these things were happening, that could happen. Like, he's down. Why do you keep hitting him? Like,
Right.
what? You just, it seems beyond you to even comprehend. So it was very shocking. And it was just like, oh crap, this is happening again. And now it's the juice. Oh no.
Yeah. And this is something that's very specific to the LAPD because, the LAPD is just notoriously brutal and racist. In fact, they used to recruit from the KKK in the South. Because, they talk about how this has been going on for tens of, dozens of years, whatever. They did. They literally would go to the South and get these KKK members and say, hey, come out to LA, get a job as a cop. And, the Daryl Gates era, it was just very, very violent. And like Darden was saying, every African-American person in Los Angeles had either been a victim of this or knew someone who was or had seen something. I mean, this was just part of their life.
And I think this is one of those things, because this is what happened after the Me Too, when Me Too happened and you had to explain it to men. But just the way women, we are so used to being attacked and that our whole entire lives are about protecting ourselves. Like, and it always was about us. And if you get raped, if something happens to you, it's your fault. It was just recognizing and seeing like, oh my God, this has been this person's experience. Like every single Black man, Black woman, person of color has had this kind of experience.
Yeah. And Darden said that, OJ really wasn't part of the Black community.
No, not at all.
But once he was charged with murder, people could connect with his circumstances and his Blackness.
Yes.
And so for the first time, because like I said in the very beginning, OJ was colorless. And now all of a sudden, he's a Black man.
Yeah.
And look how he's being treated. And he's accused of killing a white woman.
Yeah, and a white man.
And a white man. But a white woman especially has been the source of a lot of Black men getting killed because they looked at a white woman the wrong way.
Yes.
Or were accused of raping a white woman or whatever. This white woman, this is triggering.
Yes.
These are all the triggering things. And all of a sudden it's like, the white community kind of turned on him and the Black community turned in and came and were like, okay, you're one of us.
Yeah.
Like, you are one of us. And this will, I'm sure in the next couple of episodes of this documentary, we'll get into why the race and the makeup of the jury was also probably of everything, even more than his celebrity, the reason he was acquitted.
Yeah.
Because it was a predominantly minority jury and people who've had experiences just like that and who can connect with him and the prosecution got it all wrong. And they thought this was going to be fabulous for them.
Well, yeah. And I think just watching the scenes, in this documentary, which I don't think I'd seen before, watching the scenes of, from the Rodney King trial, which was also aired. I didn't watch that, but you see scenes of them asking one of these detectives, like as he's beating poor Rodney King down, and it's like, well, does this seem like excessive force? And you're watching this and you watch this guy go, no, I don't think that's too excessive. And then you see the verdict, not guilty. And you see I guess they got shots of people in various communities, how they reacted to it. And you see, I think it's at this coffee shop or something, or a restaurant or something. You just see tears coming down, like this black man's face, like just yet again. And I think that was the big piece of it, is like, we got to win. Like, we're just sort of sick of this, sick of black men being treated this way, and sick of white cops getting away with it. We're just sick of it. And it just symbolized it. Right.
Well, and this case is a classic example of jury nullification. That this is the definition, is when it doesn't matter what the evidence is. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
They are sending a message. They are not going to convict this man. This is payback. This is punishment for decades and decades of the LAPD, treating black men like they're not human, and pure and simple. And, there were a lot of black women on the jury, and they somehow they didn't think that women would, connect to this. And it's like, hello, you're talking about their sons.
Yeah.
Their sons have been
their
victims
partners,
of this.
Their sons, their nephews. Yeah.
Exactly. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean that, all this, you're just going to automatically, side with the prosecution. I mean, they got the jury thing very wrong, but the jury was also on their own trajectory of no, enough. This is payback.
Yeah.
So,
and again, I also really think that no one wanted to believe that he was guilty. I didn't. Nobody wanted to believe that he would do this. Like, you just don't want to believe. Like, really? Huh?
Even black people didn't want to believe it, because I at the time, I had several, black male friends say, "Oh, well, OJ didn't do it, but he knows who did." And it's like, okay, well, if he knows who did, then was he there? I mean, was he just like directing it, or I mean, what? Yeah, they didn't want to believe it either, but they also, didn't. It's complicated. I don't know. I can't say what they were thinking, but yeah, nobody wanted to believe this. This was just not.
Now, this I thought was interesting, and this is a fact I had never heard before, which is, so 8:47, OJ's finally in custody. And I think it was Tom Lang who was able to talk him into, like, hey, this is what's he figured out, I need to make this man seem like a hero to people, to get him out of the car without the gun so he won't get shot, so that we can arrest him safely. And so they finally get him in custody, and apparently they're driving away, and OJ says, "What are all these N-words doing in Brentwood?"
Yeah.
I'd never heard that before. Had you heard that?
Yeah, I'd heard that. Yeah.
Okay. That was a little that was shocking too. And I think that shows you a bit of, like the life that OJ had been living, and maybe how he saw or he perceived. I don't know, people of his own community. I don't know.
Yeah. Cause he really didn't, it seemed to me, I don't know. Well, I mean, his best friends were not white, obviously. I don't know. But I mean, it's not like he was out in the community doing work for, causes and
And that was another thing too, which I think gets lost sometimes, is, he was not somebody who was exactly what you're saying. He was not, maybe he did charity golf games, but he was not a charitable. It's not like, you mentioned Steph Curry. Like Steph Curry and his wife, Ayesha Curry, very famously, when COVID happened, they were making, I know they did it locally, like they were making sure that kids were getting lunches. Like, that Steph Curry he and his wife are very involved in their community it was lunch for everybody. But that was not how OJ was seen. That's not at all who he was. And, you know, we all famously know that when the jury went to his home, that Johnny Cochran changed all the art and all the pictures, like took down all of the white people of him
Pictures
with his
of white people,
and put a bunch of black art and stuff that wasn't him. Yeah, to make him seem different.
Yeah. It was very ironic, you know, that he was having this effect. But again, it really wasn't about him. It was just a symbol. It was a chance to get back at the LAPD and to, you know, basically kind of point out that they're idiots and racists and, you know, and whatever else.
Well, and they also point out that, because also Shapiro, who wasn't as savvy as Johnny Cochran with this stuff, he did, though, ask for a speedy trial, which actually was very smart because they knew it was going to take time. Forget all that blood evidence and DNA and all that takes time, but they were going to play that. But it really put people... I mean, what happened was that for the first time ever, this is another thing that we talked about this too, where you're innocent and you get convicted. And if you don't have any money, who do you have? A public defender, someone who doesn't have as much money, doesn't have resources or time to focus on this. It was almost like this was the flip of it. It was almost a little bit like you had this defendant who had this dream team of people that could drop everything and work on this for the entire time versus Marcia Clark and Chris, you know what I mean? And they had less in many ways.
Yeah, they had less resources than OJ. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's never happened before. Like that is a big giant, you don't see.
Although I should say that they maybe had less attorneys working on the case, although they have an entire office, you know, district attorney's office of people working behind the scenes. But, you know, they have unlimited money, you know, they can hire the best experts, they can do all of that, but so could OJ, you know, and he did, and it worked. I mean, it was, but again, it wasn't just that. It was all these other factors that we just were talking about. It was a perfect storm of things. And, you know, going back to, you know, the surrender or when he finally got home and the chaos of just the helicopters, the police cars, people like in bushes, and they had no control over this whole scene. They had a sniper who was ready to shoot him if he got out of the car with a gun.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think, is that when his agent says, he tells Lang, he's like, you know, let me get him out. Let me help you. Because he didn't trust that, you know, he says, LA will burn if you shoot OJ.
Oh, yeah. Because if they shot OJ and OJ went down, then boom, that's a riot right there at Rockingham. And
the people are already there. Like
people are already out on the street pissed. So, no.
I was shocked, again, having not seen this footage in so long, is seeing the overhead footage of how many people were on the scene and in the streets and in the bushes. It was such chaos. It was like, oh my God, it was crazy. It is a miracle that he didn't get shot because literally he's still in the back seat. They're still negotiating with him. He's sitting in the driveway in the back seat. I think AC gets out of the car.
Yeah.
And he goes and talks to the cops, and then he goes inside, and then all of a sudden from nowhere, his son, Jason, comes running out. I'm surprised Jason didn't get shot because he literally came running out of the bushes practically up to the car and is like yelling at his dad, you know, through the window, whatever. And then they get him to go away. And somehow OJ managed to get out of the car without a gun and not get shot. I mean, that was a miracle, honestly.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that was the last thing that was their biggest fear. Is that they were going to shoot OJ. They were going to
and LA would have burned.
Oh, yeah.
if that had happened.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, too, talking about how OJ really wasn't, you know, this kind of guy who's known for civil rights, you know, bringing in Johnny Cochran, someone who was very involved in civil rights work as a lawyer for his entire career and like police brutality cases and all of that. So that gave him a lot of respect and cred.
Was that Darden that was talking about that, or was that his associate that Carl
Douglas? I can't remember. I think it was. I think maybe it was Darden. But
yeah, and I do think that is one piece of this that is different than what we've seen in the past of the people that have commented. Because in the past, we've usually seen Marcia Clark talk about this. We've seen but to hear these two Black men, both on opposing sides, saying, "Listen, this was how everyone, they had different positions, but they very much were on the same plane of how
they understood what was happening.
They understood, and they knew exactly how that felt. And I think that's what's so unusual about this.
Yeah. And I always felt for Christopher Darden, because I felt like, he's the lone Black person, Black man on this prosecution team. They put a lot on him. He was the one who was supposed to be, he was doing the domestic violence aspect of it. Like Marcia Clark was more doing the blood evidence and, all of that. And I think that he really felt like he failed Nicole and her family. And he famously, at the press conference after the verdict, really broke down. And he was really, for many years, didn't want to talk about it, wasn't seen. I think he must have wrote a book, but everybody wrote a book.
Yeah.
Every attorney on that case wrote a book. But I just felt like he just had more than just so much pressure on him, and then pressure from his community.
Yeah.
And he did talk about how, because he's from the Bay Area. I think he's from, I want to say like Richmond or somewhere near there, but Vallejo maybe. I don't know, but he's from the Bay Area, and when he would come home and people were mad at him.
Yeah.
People from his community here, the Black community, were upset with him. And, it wasn't easy for him.
Yeah.
So fascinating. Yeah. This case, I don't know. This case never gets old. It's, and again, it's the passage of time does help see things differently. And, this really was the trial of the century, as they say.
Yeah.
In terms of so many different things.
Yeah. I'm trying to look up and see Christopher Darden. Let's see. He went to San Jose State University, and then he went to University of California, Hastings, which is Berkeley.
No, that's San Francisco.
Oh, that is? Oh, okay. Sorry. I was thinking of Bolt. Is that
Bolt? It's not even called Bolt anymore. It's called something else. But
yeah, no, he was born in Richmond, California, the fourth of 8 siblings. And then he went to San Jose State. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, and then we hear about the spaghetti and the cockroach and the spaghetti, and you knew immediately when he talked about that cockroach. I'm like, oh, this is Furman. And that's all. And truly, and in some ways, there's a little bit of this F around and find out a little bit. Like, it didn't take much. It didn't take much for them to find that one of the lead detectives was using the N-word, and because he wrote that screenplay or whatever it was, like the way in which he spoke. So if it was that easy for them to figure that out with this guy, then that shows you very clearly how bad the LA Police Department was. Do you know what I mean?
Well, we just saw it with those Rodney King officers.
But that's the thing. It doesn't take much. It's a little bit like they didn't even have to hunt. They didn't even have to really search that far,
right? To
find.
They weren't digging. I think that woman came to them,
and was like, "Hey, did you know this?" Yeah.
He gave an interview to some woman. Yeah, he had written a screenplay, or he was pitching something. Anyway, she had receipts. She had the audio. She had all this information, and she went to them and said, "Hey, look at this."
Yeah. So. And I think that's also very telling. It's, again, you did not have to search hard to find him. And so, and I think that's a lot of the anger that I'm assuming that we're seeing with Tom Lang, which is he's very angry because I'm sure he was like, you here and you know what I mean? Just the fact that this is attached to him and his name. And
Yeah,
I can understand that of being like, I'm the middle person here. I have to follow orders. I have to do with these things, but I know I was doing what I was told. Now I'm part of this crew of, dummies.
Well, yeah, and it became political, and he got, caught up in it. And it's his name. His name is forever going to be associated with this, what they see as a loss, losing this case. So anyway, God, I can't wait for part 3 and 4.
Yeah, we're going to see the cockroach and the spaghetti, and
it's really good. So we will be back next week with part 3 and 4 of American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson. And so thank you for joining us. And if you like the podcast, you could help us out by supporting us in a couple different ways. You can subscribe to get the podcast downloaded every time we release a new episode. You can leave us a 5-star review. You can also, if you want more content, you can find us on Patreon. We have 2 different subscription levels there. You can check that out, patreon.com. And
we'll be back on Friday. You want to tell everybody what the schedule looks like?
Oh, that's right. We are starting Love is Blind, starting this Friday after you hear this, February 14th, Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So our episodes will drop on Fridays, the same days that the show comes out. So
So it's episodes 1 through 6, February 14th. We will be breaking that all down, and then every Friday until it's over. I think it's like 4 weeks.
And then
Blind.
With Sister Wives being gone, we've moved the Monday to Tuesday, so these will come out on Tuesday, and then I think we'll get back to we're going to take a break from our rewind and maybe do some other things, Sister Wives related.
Yeah,
after that.
So. Tune in, stay tuned, subscribe. So you just get all of it automatically. You won't have to think about it.
Yes, exactly.
It'll just be there. Okay. And we're also on social media, Psych Legal Pop on all the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky.
Yes.
So see how
very happening.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Hannah Burner from Giggly Squad. Have you ever put on a bra that makes you feel like a goddess? Prepare to be obsessed with the Dream Angels Wicked Bra from Victoria's Secret, the iconic brand behind the world's most comfortable bras. And I only wear the most comfortable bras. The bestseller features an innovative sling for perfect lift without padding, and the fit is chef's kiss. Awaken your inner goddess with new colors and super femme lace embroidery. Find out why this bra has thousands of 5-star reviews and counting. Shop it in stores and online at victoriassecret.com.